Welcome, everybody, to AI in Healthcare today. My name is Ben Haynes. I'll be your host today. I lead the healthcare and life science vertical in North America, and I am very honored to be here with the folks with me today. I'm dialing in from the Bay Area with our blanket of summer fog still in the garden. Myself is it's looking pretty good right now, and so that gives me a chance to make a lot of really great meals when I clock out today. So I'm looking forward to that. But right now, I'm excited to be here with you all and with this esteemed group of panelists today to be able to have this really cool conversation. So just a couple of housekeeping items here. Mute is enabled for everyone. If you would like to go ahead and speak as we ask questions for that time, go ahead and raise your hand. We do have polls, so please interact with those, and we'll be walking through that. We've got question and answer and chat as we went through. So please feel free to activate all of your thoughts into those areas. All right, so for now, I get to introduce to you Robin Braun, Head of AI Technology Sales for Certara. Robin lives a mile above sea level in the mountains of Colorado. When not immersed in healthcare IT, she is wrangling her canine family and giving them plenty of exercise. If you're ever in need of fun dog pictures, you can check out her Twitter feed for a pick-me-up. Next up, we have Romina Elias, Chief Nursing Informatics Officer for Dell. Now, Romina started off life in the islands of the Philippines, and she's coming to us live from Big Apple now. And Romina shares her empathy and passion for her patients. And when not working with them, she enjoys time with her husband and 4 cats. Next, we've got Aaron Hoffman on the panel. Aaron is our healthcare technology field director, hails from Northern California, and has also lived the island life in Hawaii. Now he lives in your own City of Roses. Aaron is an adrenaline seeker. He gets out on the trail with his dirt bike and out across the country to get his fresh air. Next up, and last week for our moderator, the one who will be helping us with all of our polls and questions, we've got our very own Roger Burnett. He is our healthcare field director for the West. Now, Roger shares the same mountain air as Robin, and you can get him to agree to anything while he's writing an email. Roger has traveled to some of the most remote temples in the world with his family, sustained by his talent for dad jokes. Welcome, panelists, and thank you all for being here and being part of our discussion today. So for everyone here, when you signed up for this session, we asked, what were you most interested for AI? Now, here is a representation of what you shared with us. These are the topics that we're prepared to talk about and discuss today. And if you have any other comments or any other thoughts, please feel free to share those in the chat, and that will get the attention of our panelists. We'll incorporate that into the discussion. Okay, with that, Robin, Aaron, let's help us understand a little bit more how AI started in this process and where we're at in this discussion.
Absolutely. And for those on here, most of this discussion today will actually be discussion, but we thought it would be great to start with a few level setting slides, but don't worry, this is not going to be done by PowerPoint, so please don't all hang up immediately. Really quickly, just wanted to do some quick definitions. This actually, when I was reading the Why AI Will Save the World, the review from Mark Andreessen, I thought this was really an interesting way to define AI and what AI isn't. AI is it's math and software code, which really allows computers to understand, synthesize at increasingly significant scale, and generate knowledge in ways similar to how people do it. But I think also that we've taken into context what it isn't necessarily the dark and doom of the killer software and robots that we see popularly in movies or occasionally in our nightmares, being able to take over and control the world. And also, I think one of the things we will be touching on today is what is the promise of AI, understanding that that it is still, while it has been around for quite a while, that that we are at a real nexus point for its growth and explosion of what it can do to help augment people. Moving next.
There you go.
Just very quickly, just some of the terms that we're touching on today. That there are multiple types of AI. There's extractive, generative. Extractive being around being able to go through hundreds of thousands files, spreadsheets, text-based documents, unstructured documents such as PDFs or PowerPoints, being able to extract answers in context from there. Generative AI is being able to, is also a large language model, most familiarly people have heard of ChatGPT. However, it's where essentially you're able to generate novel answers. Things that you're able to, so the differences there are when you use what type of AI, and we'll be touching on some of those things as we go through the discussion today about using the right type of AI for the right use case. That there are, when you're doing research, you likely want to use frequently as you're looking for proof points, as you're looking for what's been done. You're going to be more focused on extractive because generative can actually go generate things like clinical trials that don't actually exist when you go and try to reference them. However, generative can be fantastic for starting to create a synthesis or be able to document a summary and being able to, how can you go out and use multiple types of AI at the right time for what you're trying to achieve. We'll be touching on some things around base models today, particularly if you're into deep learning, that basically a base model that's been trained to deliver results and trying to on kind of a corpus of data, understanding what that data is, but then being able to fine tune that within your context as well. Named entity recognition or NER, being able to take going beyond keyword search and bring it into context. Natural language processing and is what it says, which is being able to instead of writing a query, being able to ask questions. So a lot of different terms and ways of approaching AI that and a way of approaching data that you may not have had in the past. Being able to now being able to look at the hype cycle for AI. The big thing here is being able to look at that as we're going up to inflated expectations. Everyone is excited for AI. ChatGPT, kind of took the world by storm. There's a lot of innovation. There's so much happening, but being able to ride those expectations and go through that trough of disillusionment, but understanding that on the other side of that is that productivity, being able to use AI to support and augment what you do on a daily basis, but understanding that we're not at the end of this journey for many parts of the type of AI we're talking about today. We're still at the beginning of how to use it from a practical and tactical standpoint. Next slide.
Yeah, and this is really exciting for us because, we hear a lot about these different use cases, these different ways of communicating AI, and folks come to talk to us about AI, and this is a very good way to level set. So just a real quick shout out to the folks that are here. All these different concepts, any one of them that resonates with you, just throw one of them in the chat so that the rest of us can kind of share an understanding of why we're here and what is resonating with some of you. Thanks.
So this is one of my favorite pictures depicting early deep learning. It's Frank Rosenblatt. It's actually kind of considered the father of neural networks and deep learning. And this is him actually establishing a neural network. When it was 1950s, you had to do it with a whole bunch of wires and transistors and trying to literally create those neural network pathways in wire. Now we're able to do that with deep learning and being able to really change how we approach the outcomes that we're able to produce with AI, and being able to, in large language models, being able to leverage neural networks. But I think it's really interesting that this started back in the 50s, and that the technology has now transitioned to the point where we no longer have to look like a switchboard, but instead can leverage the software. Aaron?
Yeah, and the explosion of interest, really goes back to the first introduction of transformers in 2017, right? And that birthed the original GPT transformer, and its small parameter set of less than a billion parameters. And with each successive release of GPT, the number of parameters in the models increased exponentially. And today we've got GPT-4 is behind the ChatGPT. They just updated that earlier this year. They haven't released how many parameters are in that, but we went from 175 billion in GPT-3 to rumored to be close to 1 trillion in GPT-4. So we're seeing this explosion of large language models and all the capabilities in generative AI that it's kind of driving. Next.
Really quickly, just and both Certara and Dell are strong partners with NVIDIA. So just a quick shout out from them. Part of what's enabling this, you'll see that that transition in models is also aligned to the transition in technology and supporting technology, and its ability to be able to keep up with the compute power at a reasonable accessibility to generate these type of models, and to be able to process through all of those neural networks. So really you see that confluence of both the software and hardware coming together to create an infrastructure that now allows us to jump forward much more quickly than we did in the past. Next slide.
Yeah, and it's an interesting parallelism too. I want to touch on, what you're referring to there, Robin, and that as these transformers and large language models are driving more and more capabilities, the demand for the GPU infrastructure to support those and support the training has been driving this acceleration in the capabilities of NVIDIA's GPUs, to the point where we're seeing that if you compare the A100 to the H100 GPUs, it's a 4 to 6x increase in capabilities. And that's also what's driven the release this year of Dell's 8-way GPU box based on the NVIDIA HGX platform.
Just keeps leapfrogging forward.
That's right.
Yep.
But I think the generative AI, all of that has come up with ChatGPT, that really has become kind of the seminal, kind of the iPhone moment for AI, where people who more thought of it as something scary and difficult and only in the domain of the data scientist or the killer robot, depending if you're looking at the movie or internally, that really being able to now bring that into the generative AI, that has now become a part and parcel of what we talk about, and that it is that iPhone moment, and that it is proliferating and really touches everything that you see here, being able to be a part of that and to augment what people are able to do, and will continue to do so in new and different ways as we go forward.
Yeah, and I wanted to throw this slide in here just to kind of highlight some of the stats around what the release of ChatGPT has done, just from a financial perspective, right? First of all, as far as the time to first 1 million users, right? We look at these other major platforms out there like Spotify, Instagram, Facebook. Those are months. It took days for ChatGPT to get to 1 million users. And then the way Microsoft is just brilliant in making that investment in them, looking at their data there that they've published, they're looking at an initial profit. I think the first year of use around like the 1 to 200 million mark, but the following year, as it accelerates, they're looking at close to $1 billion in profit from the use of ChatGPT into their systems. And so the use of these types of models is just exploding when it comes to the opportunity, any type of organization has to improve their business models, their workflows, the way they use data, the way they do their jobs, right? One of the expressions I like that I've heard recently is, people that use AI are going to replace people that don't use AI. The AI isn't necessarily going to replace our jobs, but it's an enabler to make your job even better, right? To give you tools to excel at your job. Next. And then, if you look at the AI and machine learning landscape, this is why we're having this webinar today, is to kind of sift through the plethora of platforms, technologies, tools that are out there. This is what every leader of an IT organization looks at today, is in this sea of a landscape. How do you pick what to use? How do you determine what's going to enable your company to make strides forward in leveraging AI for your internal processes, for your customer-facing processes, for your patients, for your clinical workflows? And it's daunting, right? Everyone is struggling with trying to figure out the way forward, and this doesn't capture everything. One of the unique aspects of my job is I work with a lot of startups, a lot of small companies that are jumping into the AI space with really cool sounding platforms, applications, but there are literally thousands of them. One CIO I talked to, he said, AI, it's a death by 1,000 cuts, because trying to identify the application or the platform that's really going to enable his organization and his healthcare system, it's a daunting task. And so that's what we're hoping to do today, is cut through some of that and focus in on a few areas where we can help you out.
Great. All right, you guys, thank you so much for getting us set up. So hopefully that gives you all a good level set for where we're at. I think now is a time for us to kick off a poll. Hey, Roger?
Yeah, speaking of a level set, we'd like to get your impressions about AI being used in healthcare. And we're going to launch this as a poll. You have this question. We'll leave it up for about 30 seconds, give you a chance to respond about what your thoughts about AI in healthcare are. This is anonymous, but I, for one, welcome our robot overlords. So you can say what you want and there are no repercussions.
Yeah, and like Ben said earlier too, any questions you want to throw into chat, feel free to type them in. I'm glad to take questions during the session here.
All right, so we're going to wrap up the poll here, and we'll display those results of what folks thought about AI. And so we have about 36% that are very positive, somewhat positive at 43%, neutral and not sure at 14%, and there's one who does not welcome the robot overlords, who is very negative. So that's an interesting spread. It seems like most people think that there's potential for making a difference in healthcare with AI. We'll have more poll questions to kind of dive into that a little bit more in terms of where some of those perspectives come from. But we'd like to actually turn this over to some of our panelists to discuss further from an industry practitioner point of view.
Yeah, so that gives a chance to then just kind of get into some of this discussion here. Really, I'll start with you, Aaron. What do you see are some of the real use cases that we can take advantage of right now, and the best ways that AI can really benefit healthcare?
Yeah, sure. There's a ton, and I bet every attendee on this call can give us a dozen examples of where they see use cases for, and that's what I'd love to throw into chat too as well, where you see use cases. What I'm hearing from customers and what I'm seeing in some of the infrastructure deployments that I've been involved in for, AI and ML workflows is, one is making use of the data, right? Every health system I've worked with has a ton of data that is that sits idle, right? There is so much data that they can use to make better decisions about providing care, about their workflows, different ways they can enable their decision-making processes. And like Joe pointed out in chat, right? But there has to be guardrails. And that's why we're seeing a lot of customers saying, no, look, we don't want to upload all of this into the cloud. We want something on-prem, and it needs to be a closed system where it's not pulling in data from the outside. We've got a closed, generative AI platform that has access and is being trained only on our internal data sets, right? And so a lot of our customers are looking for, first of all, pre-trained models to start from that they retrain with their domain-specific data sets and keep refreshing with those internal data sets and keep it as a closed system so that they can extract the value out of their data, but not allow that to get access to the outside or allow others access to it from the outside.
No, that's great advice. Robin, what is your perspective, on the similar question about really how can we start to see some of the benefits of AI in healthcare? You're on mute.
Robin.
Come back.
Of course. I think it really can touch pretty much every part of healthcare, depending on what the AI is doing. We've seen early success with image review and identification, augmenting and assisting radiology in being able to do identification of different indications. But where we're really finding, into what Aaron was talking about, a lot of success and a lot of interest is being able to connect disparate pieces of data, whether it's from unstructured information, being able to connect it with structured information, and being able to do analytics around that text, and starting to piece those things together in a way that takes a person a ton of time to be able to do all of that manually, being able to do all of that much more seamlessly with AI, and being able to leverage deep learning, so that whether you are looking at early drug discovery and clinical trials, to being able to do nursing assist and kind of operational efficiency and quality, as you start to look across the landscape of what people are doing, it's wrestling with the data and being able to, rather than spend their time identifying, finding, and collating and coalescing internal, external data, all of those pieces, it's really focused on their expertise and being able to take the next step based on the outcomes and the insights that they can now see in a much clearer and more succinct fashion.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that perspective. That's super helpful, really focusing on the data and being able to have access to that. Now, Romina, you've got a really interesting perspective, and this has come up really around some of operational efficiency and really what's happening at the front lines. What is your perspective from how healthcare and nursing can benefit from some of these AI tools?
Sure, Ben. Taking it a step further from data and analytics, it's how does it help frontline end users and clinicians, right? It's that clinical decision support tool, and I love how Surya had mentioned that it's AI as a sidekick, a tool, a helper, right, for clinicians and other healthcare workers to do their jobs better and more efficiently. In healthcare, and we are all in healthcare, as you know, there are a lot of inefficiencies, manual work that's done, millions of spreadsheets out there to just gather all the data that we need in order to drive some insight from that data. AI can bring that automation in, making it easier for the end users to be able to just grab that data and do something about it. So for clinicians or for nurses and even physicians on the floor taking care of the patients, it's the most important thing that they need to look at for a patient and make a decision on, being AI being able to kind of grab that and bring that to them in an efficient manner as well. I think that's certainly one of the biggest use cases for AI in healthcare.
No, that's
And whenever Romina says anything about nursing, I pay attention because she actually is a nurse. She's been a nurse for a number of years, and she has her doctorate in nursing as well. So we always listen to Romina. One thing I wanted to add on to that too, that I see more and more concern around the ability to staff up, right? It seems like there's less and less people entering the nursing field and coming out with degrees and nursing certificates, and so there's this demand for staff, and there isn't the applicants to fill all those roles, effectively. And so, like I'm seeing in the chat, right? This is where this can help with staff augmentation, right? Not replacing any particular role, but making your role more focused on nursing and clinical care instead of all these mundane tasks that really have nothing to do with being a nurse or being a clinician.
And I know we were going to talk about this a little bit later too, but now that we
this is the next question actually, and it's perfect because we have so much activity in the chat about this very thing. So Romina, this, go ahead.
So talking about the staffing shortage in healthcare, right? We're seeing the World Health Organization is predicting 15 million staff shortage by 2030. And we're seeing that now, not even 7 years from now. We can't staff up our units. The ratio of taking care of a patient has definitely increased. Nurses don't have enough time apart from taking on other tasks that other healthcare workers couldn't perform just because they're the catch-all. Nurses end up being the catch-all for everything that the patients need. So if we don't have enough dietary techs, if we don't have enough respiratory, if we don't have enough PT or OT techs, all of those tasks now fall on nursing to do on top of everything else that they need to do, on top of the more patients that they need to take care of. So how can we help? How can AI really take away the manual repetitive tasks that they need to do? Can it decrease the documentation burden, right? Why do they have to write their assessments on a piece of paper, then document it on the EMR later on? Why can't they use AI to document on the spot with just their voice? So a lot of that's just one of the kind of use case for streamlining really the process for nursing and to help the nursing shortage. But it's also like we mentioned, augmentation of care delivery, right? We cannot perform the same jobs that we have been doing for the last millennia because things have changed, right? COVID has changed that. Technology has changed. Healthcare has changed. So the way that we deliver patient care as nurses or as physicians, as other healthcare workers has to change. The onset of virtual nursing has come up. And is there a different model where there's a virtual nurse delivering part of the care so that the nurses on the floors can perform the skills that they need and practice at the top of their license? Is there automation that we could do through AI to notify nurses or other clinicians that a patient may be at risk for falls or other untoward outcomes like pressure injuries? So there's a ton of automation, and if you don't stop me from talking, I'm going to talk for the rest of the
Okay, great.
hour for sure.
So we're definitely in line with some of the questions that were asked around, clinical settings that AI can be applied to, and so I think you named a couple there. Robin, some of your thoughts on that area, right? Where can we apply some of these tools in a clinical setting?
Yeah, I thought some of the comments have been great in the chat, by the way, to the folks on the call. The calling out how can we help, even as I was like touching on some of the text analytics pieces and being able to connect disparate pieces of data together. How can you help offload some of the quality and research burdens that that nurses are tasked with? How can you help all of those ancillary tasks that are part of the nurse's day, but not necessarily directly connected to specific patient care. How again can you make it take 5 minutes instead of 5 hours? Those type of things, or where they can find insights better in being able to do that. And and I think that that's really where the helping the nurses are obviously amazing subject matter experts. They shouldn't also have to be subject matter experts on doing SQL queries and on figuring out where all of the data is that they're looking for, or that it was in some note on some platform in somewhere. That's not value add when that's something that the AI system can do for them. And to Ramina's point of being able to, we know there's alarm fatigue, we understand those sort of things, but how can you make those things more integrated into the workflow? How can you make it where there's better predictive engagement rather than reactive engagement? A fall alarm that goes off after someone has fallen is reactive. It's letting you know something occurred, as opposed to it's much better for everyone when we can get and move that bar into predictive, where we can help with those quality assessments, and so that they can instead look at how to update procedures and update workflow to help everyone be more effective and more efficient.
Yeah, and that echoes what we're talking about here, that efficiency, the cost in healthcare, and how can we help drive that down, and really where do we see the value coming out of some of these tools, and also how do we get out of the trap of creating these tools or these models and bringing in technology that may not be as effective as we had hoped. So those kind of areas there are some of the things that our customers are running into when they try to implement some of these tools, right, Robin? So talk a little bit about that. Let's get a little bit practical around when we have decided there's these tools and found some use cases, then what happens?
I think that's where as we look at, we've talked on the use cases, we've started looking at the tools. I think the thing that people have to be aware of with AI and is that it's not just flipping a switch, is that it's something that that as you implement it, you need to take into consideration workflow. You need to take into consideration, first and foremost, what data are you going to be able to fine tune it on or train it on. The models that come are going to be base models, what we touched on at the beginning of the conversation. They're not going to be attuned specifically to the environment, whether that is watching video or that is picking up specific language in text. That there's always going to be some degree of fine tuning that still occurs in AI. I think the statistic is around 90% of AI models never actually make it into production. And so I think that's where, when I'm working with customers, it's helping them to look at it from a technology perspective, like from a Certara perspective. We're looking at it from a platform perspective, and how to make it easier for them But looking at it not only from what can the AI do, but then how can it fit within the workflow of the healthcare environment, whether that's research or that's actually clinical care. You know, both have a workflow. And how do we help, again, going back to the points that were made in both chat and that we've been bringing up, how do we help the AI augment what they're trying to do, make it more efficient, which also goes back to being able to baseline what you're doing today so that you can then show the ROI tomorrow for the improvement. If you're not able to show that ROI, it's very difficult to justify going on and doing the next use case. And so that's probably the other thing that I work with customers on is what is the first use case to pick, and then to continue to build out from there, so that you
take a stepwise approach.
Right, exactly. Don't try to boil the ocean. I strongly urge going mud puddle to mud puddle. Eventually, you'll get up to the ocean, but start with the mud puddle.
Right, and that echoes what was
And
said here with Chad talking about, you know, there's so many tools out there, right? And how do we make sure that we implement them correctly? There's tools that are even non-AI and haven't been fully implemented correctly. So how do we avoid that trap? Ramina, what are your thoughts there?
Yes, so I want to double click on what Robin had mentioned on making sure that it's part of the workflow, right? So we talked about tools and healthcare is a you know, pervasive with this is that we see a problem, we use a tool to solve it. We see another problem, we use another tool to solve it. And what ends up happening is the end users get bogged down with all of these different tools to use that solves just one problem. And instead of looking at a platform approach, or instead of looking at what is the current workflow and how can we alleviate some of that manual task or eliminate some of those processes and be able to inject the AI in it or you know, the clinical decision support within that workflow so it's as seamless as possible. I think there was a mention on the chat as well, like it has to be easy. It can't be another tasks that clinicians have to do outside of their workflow. And that comes into how AI is adopted into healthcare is that part of that whole change management kind of spectrum, right? How is it adopted? How is it recepted? And how is it designed for the clinician's workflow?
Right, that's so important to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table to really make sure that these tools are implemented correctly, and you know that puts a great burden on the folks that are bringing the technology into the organization, and that's where we encounter a lot of folks, and those conversations are pretty involved. And you know, Erin, what are some of the things that you're seeing around the considerations that folks are having to deal with from a technology perspective, you know, as this side of the conversation, as we kind of stumble through, in some cases, these implementations?
Yeah, sure. You know, what I'm hearing and seeing from my customers is not wanting another silo, not wanting another platform to manage. They want something that's holistic, that can, you know, leverage shared platforms. And that's where a lot of our infrastructure solutions are focused, is that broad platform approach that supports a number of different, you know, application types, right? And also to build on what, you know, Chad said about, you know, taking that, it's going to take visionary management leadership to push AI adoption. I would say, yeah, and before that, it's going to take, you know, visionary management leadership to, you know, have that AI platform that can address multiple needs by a health system, right? And not like, you know, Ramina is saying, another app for this or that and that. You know, there's already death by 1,000 apps in all the health systems I work with, where, you know, any spare, you know, development application management time they have is focused on maintaining the existing applications and not developing new capabilities. And so that's where Dell is trying to help in this space, is identifying, you know, those, you know, AI platform partners that can, you know, that have a broader appeal to our customers, not just tackling one problem. because then we're just going to, tackle 1,000 different problems, and you're going to have another, 100 applications to manage. But no, we want to find that right fit that's going to address a broad range of needs within an organization.
Great. Yeah, no, that helps a lot. Roger, I think it might be time for another poll so we can kind of get some of the thoughts on the folks out there based on what we've been talking about. And again, thanks for all of your participation in the chat. It's really helped us to guide this conversation in a way that makes more sense for you all.
So going along with what Aaron was talking about with considerations, what do you think the challenges are? And thinking of your organization and what you think the biggest single obstacle may be for implementing AI technology in your healthcare organization. Is it budget? Is it privacy and security concerns? Is it, integrating it in? Lack of experience or regulatory and compliance concerns? So we'll leave this poll up for another probably 30 seconds or so, and see what responses we get, and they're coming in.
Thank you, Sharia. All of the above.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there isn't one issue. There's 100 issues and challenges, and
speaking of which,
AI stack.
Aaron, just like you said, so sharing these results, this is interesting. There's probably lack of experience is probably the only one that sort of stands out just a little bit as a blocker, but all of these things, all of the above are considerations: budget, privacy, integration, and regulatory compliance as well. So sounds like we have our work cut out for us, Ben.
Indeed. Well, this is definitely the first of many of these discussions, and again, all of your input is helpful to get us guiding this conversation the right way. Operational adoption.
Yeah, and Joe addressed one of those two, at the beginning of the chat session. He said, "I'm all in for healthcare as long as there's good guardrails, rules of the road, right, and not a rogue system, right?" 100%, man. Think about the data that any of these AI platforms are going to have access to. There's so much sensitive data, and you have to have controls over that. For those that aren't familiar with, Certara and Vyasa, it runs on top of NVIDIA AI Enterprise, and NVIDIA provides, a lot of frameworks around training, modeling, and inferencing large language models. But they also recognize those same concerns, and they also have a platform they call NVIDIA Guardrails, and it's exactly that, right? It's a module that sits between, the app that's interfacing your AI and the AI platform itself, and you instruct it to say, okay, these are the types of constraints and guardrails we want to put around the types of responses that can be provided, how those responses are delivered, and so we're seeing this, not just NVIDIA, but other kind of AI platform companies out there developing these guardrail approaches to the AI interface, right? For exactly that reason.
I would say that the guardrail also is that there's very much from the operational and infrastructure perspective and the data access perspective. As we work with customers on whether it's on different parts of their data journey with Vyasa, Certara AI. Really also there is a question that comes up, and I think it's really important as you look at automation, and particularly in healthcare, at when do you have a human review it? When do you have a human make a decision point and have that augmentation? As opposed to that the algorithm made the decision, and I know that AI is coming up for payers, it's coming up for providers, and that if it's taken without necessarily, or a lot of times we're working with researchers, that it's really important that you have someone looking over that curation or decision or outcome and signing off on it, as opposed to just going, oh, well, this is the output and that's the answer. So I think, just as with all software code has bugs, you have to remember that algorithms are code. and that it's important that as much and as important and as much promise as it's there, I think it's also important that you consider, as you look at that automation, when do you have the touch point of the person making that decision for the next step?
Yeah, those are
I
clearly some important challenges. Ramina, what are your thoughts there?
I completely agree with that, Robin, just from a clinical perspective as well. Adopting all of these algorithms, and like you said, they're codes, right? So when my specialty in nursing is obstetrics. So there's a algorithm to actually help clinicians and obstetricians predict whether a fetal heart rate is in distress or not, based on an algorithm. Now, if you take that algorithm that's vetted by and validated against a number of clinicians, but you take an experienced labor and delivery nurse looking at the strip, the fetal strip, looking at her patients, and where do you kind of set aside or make that decision to say, all right, this looks like a bad outcome for my patient versus my gut is telling me that it's not. She will be fine. She's going to be, she can deliver this baby safely, and we don't need to take her to the OR. So there's that balance of being able to use the algorithm as a kind of flag to say, listen, you need to take a look at this, right? And this is the sidekick moment for AI is I need to pay attention to this patient, but it's still my decision. And with all of my expertise and my clinical background and that critical thinking that we've been talking about in the chat is how do we take that clinician to the next level of decision making using AI as a tool versus replacing their critical thinking. So I think I want to double click on that one.
Well, that's a great opportunity for us to talk about that because there are implementations of AI currently in use, and we're working with customers today that are using some of these tools. So Ramina, tell us a little bit about that maybe some of the successes and some of the cautions that we're learning from the field.
Yeah, and we've kind of started talking about that, right? So that we talk about trust with AI. How trustworthy is AI? How relevant is it? Is it going to replace the clinical decision making for clinicians? That's why I think one of the biggest fears as well is how is that going to change my role as a clinician? How is it going to take away from my role as a clinician? So that's definitely very valid. And on the other aspect or spectrum of that is, will we come to a point where AI takes over patient care, right? With robotics and digital humans and stuff like that. My point of view as a clinician is it never would. Nothing was going to replace a nurse holding a patient's hand and making them feel better, and that emotional kind of assistance for that patient that's never going to be taken away. But AI can help that nurse to spend more time at the bedside versus spending more time. There's a recent McKinsey report that came out that said nurses spend about 20% of their day, the 12-hour shift, hunting and gathering, looking for things. That 20% of that 12-hour day can be automated so that they can spend more time educating their patients, providing on time their medications, or doing more critical assessments for that patient versus all the administrative kind of stuff that they have to do or manual tasks that they have to do throughout the day.
Yeah, very, very helpful. So Robin, you have an important perspective here. What's being used in the field. So what are your thoughts on how some of these issues are being addressed in that way?
When you start to look at how to be successful in doing this, it's exactly where Ramina was taking it is, how can we, from that augmentation, look at You don't have to do the, hunt and find. You don't have to do that you're starting to automate the things that take time and are repetitive and aren't necessarily bringing value, aren't leveraging the expertise of the person who's being tasked with doing it. And so when, working with customers in, let's say we're working with them on research and, and how can they bring that together? And one of the things we do is we're able to connect internal and external data and search that at once, leveraging large language models. That's powerful for people because they can find a 30% improvement in finding the data and being able to get at the data that they need and take out 30% of the time that they're spending searching for information. That's not using the information. That's not deciding on their hypothesis. That's taking that time out. That's not being productive. And instead being able to do that in seconds or in minutes, and returning more of the right information. And by being able to blend internal and external data, it starts to remove bias, but it also allows you to do that search across everything at once. So then you can start to find those connection points that you may not have seen if you searched PubMed and then bioRxiv and then your internal data and then, and you had 3 different spreadsheets and, and knowing me, I'd save them in 4 different places,
So this is a good place to start then, Robin, right? In your AI journey, you can kind of pick on an area that really kind of makes an impact and also doesn't make an impact. It doesn't make a too big of a splash. So great. Thank you, guys. I think we're ready for our next poll to get some more questions as we start to kind of guide this towards. I think you brought it up, but a little bit on the nursing side, a little bit more. And again, these polls were generated from a lot of the interest that we had from the registrants around how these tools would be implemented, especially in the nursing area.
Right, and we do have a number of people in the audience, I think, that are directly involved as nurses in those considerations. So, what concerns you the most about implementing AI in a context where it's used in nursing? Is it privacy, security? Is it relying on technology over human judgment and removing that context of a human mind making the right decision? Is it going to impact the relationship of a nurse and a patient? Is it an ethical question? Is there additional skills and training that need to be deployed into the environment that may cause concerns and considerations and those types of things? So, yep, I see a bunch of responses coming in. Go ahead and share those. So, looks like the biggest single concern is trust and reliance on technology over human judgment, which I think is a fair consideration. I think we've all had experiences where we've seen automation do things that we know didn't make sense. We're also concerned about considerations and bias, as well as training and skills. So those are the ones that stand out the most. What does the panel think?
Romina, you mentioned, sort of humans like to be cared for by humans, right? So I think this is being expressed here.
Absolutely, and I think it's that replacing that decision human thinking and replacing that with AI, and we're seeing some of that in the news with how payers are actually using AI to make a decision on how long should patients be staying in the hospital or the types of care that they're supposed to get, not necessarily looking at the patient themselves, which is what humans do, right? So that's what we do as case managers, as nurses, as clinicians, is look at the full picture of a human being and make a decision based on that, and personalize that decision based on the patient as well. And also I want to tie in, speaking of the patient, there's they're a big component in the development and adoption of AI as well. As we look at care delivery, we also need to take a look at how AI is impacting the patients themselves, patient-facing AI. Are they aware that certain things are, decisions in their healthcare are being done by or with the use of AI? And I think that's where transparency in AI comes into play as well, not just from the clinician's perspective, payers and providers, but also on the patient side. How is that impacting the care that I'm being given on a daily basis? I think that's also an important factor to kind of take a look at.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about, well, how do we train these models to be, the right way, right? How do we maintain those algorithms so that they do match up with our expectations of being able to provide that kind of care? Erin, what are your thoughts as we start to kind of drift into the bias conversation and what these tools are capable of of doing and of doing to us? How do you see this going?
Yeah, and that's where I see the need for a lot of expertise and consulting in the implementation of these models, right? And in addition to not just unsupervised learning, but supervised learning as well, so that there is direct feedback into the results we're getting, right, through the testing and development phase of these platforms. But on top of that, again, this goes back to something I said earlier, and what we are focused on, as Dell Technologies, is the partnerships, the companies we bring into the fold to align with our validated designs and our solutions that, provide more of that turnkey approach for our customers, because our customers don't have the time to do a lot of the training of these systems themselves, or the development or the tweaking or the customization of these models. They need something they can plug into their data sets, analyze the results, and throw it into production quickly and easily. And so that's what you'll see us focusing.
Great. And then obviously this is probably something you'd want to comment on there, Robin, a little bit. I mean, training models and how we can trust these models and start to feel like, well, yeah, this is an area, or this is a tool that actually would be useful and it can help folks.
I think two things there. The first is around understanding that that you do want to fine tune, you do want to continue training the model. You don't want to overtrain it, but you want to fine tune it. You want to kind of check on its efficacy as you go forward. It's not something you kind of put on a shelf and forget about. You want to be mindful of the model. And obviously, as you're doing that fine tuning, you'll continue to see the F score go up. You'll continue to see, it being really oriented around your environment. But you always want to make sure that you don't over rotate. It's one of the things that how do you make sure that you don't unintentionally introduce bias into something by only having input from a particular provider or a particular set of notes, things like that. As I'm talking and working with customers, being able to either look at federated learning, being able to really consider, again, going back to some of the examples that we gave first, is that, what is the first mud puddle that we can help solve, and having it contained and understood, but also understand what success looks like. Success isn't that suddenly unicorn and rainbows are going to be, kind of trotting down the halls of a hospital. It really is, there's going to be an incremental improvement. And then what is the next incremental improvement? And whether that's in research or in providing care or in augmenting the nurse's day, I think that it's improving 30 minutes here. It's giving someone back an hour there. It's letting them not be frustrated in finding the data they're looking for, and that it's something that you incrementally improve, that it's not a big bang, and that you don't and that you don't necessarily try to do 10 things at once and then do none of, and then you're not sure what actually made the difference.
Great. Yeah, that helps us really get to the practical side of this conversation. We started with, hey, there's a lot of knowledge to gain. Many of you probably have had some of that base knowledge, and we're happy to be able to kind of make sure that we're level set there. And then we looked at all of those different tools, and we like you are thinking along the same lines of how do we rationalize all of that. And Robin, you brought that, to a really good point, to make sure that we can really look at a single type of solution that can help get us started in that journey. So, this is a great area for us to talk about, where do we see some of the promise? Where do we see some of the things that we, being very practical, that we are seeing now in the field with our customers. So Aaron, maybe you can help us out with that side of things from a, we've developed a lot of tools for folks and helped a lot of folks on their journey. What are we seeing from a, yes, this is where we can see some promise?
Sure. I think, again, that goes back to what I've said earlier, that, we aren't a company that's developing AI platforms. We develop the infrastructure AI platforms run on, and we partner with AI platform vendors on the integration of those stacks and making those stacks as turnkey as possible for our customers to, realize value out of a platform as quickly as possible. So where I'm seeing, good examples there, I'm not going to name names. We can, follow up with folks later if they're interested, but we've worked with a number of companies that focus on, for example, ICU monitoring or computer vision, analyzing patient rooms for like fall detection, or automating assignments of nursing schedules, things like that. So that's where we're seeing real value in making the day-to-day life easier for clinicians.
Great. Yeah. And those examples really allow us to start to see that vision of a hospital of future starting to come together, right? They're all elements of that, right? And Ramina, so, same kind of question, right? So as we move towards the direction of that hospital of future, and we've even shown some examples of those components. Yeah, what are we seeing as far as those promising areas?
Tying it on to what Aaron had mentioned, and we actually have had some of those solutions set up in our at our HIMSS booth and also in our customer solution centers as well, where we can actually, if people are interested, be able to kind of show them and be able to have them kind of touch and feel the solutions as well. But bringing in those automation and workflow efficiency, operational efficiencies with technologies such as computer vision or sensor fusion, or remote patient monitoring, right? Coming to live, like I know a lot of the organizations are looking at virtual nursing as a new care model, bringing that into the fold and helping them kind of stand that up with our solution partners. And drive some AI capabilities in there so that you can get notification for at-risk patients, so that you're watching, that the ratio for a virtual nurse could be, 1 to 10 or more, right? To be able to kind of filter that and change the ratio, because that's just going to help with, the limited resources that we have. And also we're kind of venturing into a new form of AI where we could potentially use a digital human to be able to answer kind of low risk questions, or even do some form of translation or interpretation services, right? Instead of having to use the phone or call somebody in for that service, can we leverage a digital human built-in AI to be able to do that, change the language and be able to translate that healthcare education provided to that patient using a digital human. So we're looking into those technologies as well.
Well, and that sounds like a very safe use of AI. If we're talking about translating from language, that's a little less of a decision support type of a question, and that certainly then opens up probably hopefully a little bit more of our trust in using of these tools. So maybe that's a good foray, a good start to that. Other
Hey,
area,
Romina,
yeah.
you mentioned the CSE briefly. For those in the webinar that aren't familiar with what the CSE is and what the hospital room that I know you were instrumental in developing that in multiple of our CSE locations, can you give everyone like kind of overview of what that is and what we have in there?
Of course, thank you. Thank you for posing that question too. So we at Dell Technologies actually have a few centers of innovation. We call them Customer Solution Center. One is, I believe, Santa Clara, right? We have one in Round Rock in Texas, in Austin, Texas, and actually we have one also in New York going live next week. So in these centers, we have a hospital room of the future, what we call it, built in with the solution partners that we partner with that addresses specific healthcare challenges, whether that's safety and quality in care, workflow efficiency, or even patient and clinician satisfaction. So we really built it surrounding healthcare outcomes, and then what solutions can address those issues. And we have a physical demo of those solutions in our customer solution centers. And if you were interested, I know Erin had just kind of plugged that in, the link to the chat there, or send us an email, and we'll be more than happy to kind of show you there, whether in person or actually we can dial in virtually and have the staff, the solution team at the site be able to kind of help drive that engagement as well. So happy to kind of explore more of those solutions that we just spoke about. And we do have a site where we can actually show them to you in person again or virtually.
That's an exciting place to do work. I mean, we thrive by being challenged. As you can see, you know, we're excited by your questions in the chat and how we can interact with you and meet your challenges the best. I think is like I said, where we thrive the most. And the Solution Center is an area where that is a place where you can challenge our thinking and challenge your thinking and you know be able to really look at these different solutions. So Robin, I mean, your thoughts on that? I mean, as far as you know, being able to test out some of these tools that we're talking about today. I mean, what's the feasibility and what are you seeing out there?
Well, I have the good fortune of getting to be one of the AI platforms that is a partner with. And love the partnership and the type of discussions we're able to have to support our joint customers, and excited for kind of the conversation we've had today. You know, the great thing for us is we are in the CSCs at Dell, so we can be demoed there and shown there as a part of that. Also, we're happy to offer. For anyone who kind of just participated today or as follow-up, you know, kind of walking through a live demo of what we do as a platform, being a data fabric, being able to connect data together and be able to use it in a low code or no code approach, being able to ask natural language questions of your data. And
it's one thing to talk about it like this. It's another thing to see it live,
to actually
right?
do it. Yes.
Yeah.
And you know, we didn't want this to be a commercial, you know, we really wanted this to be interactive and, you know, and having the conversation with the customers. But I think it really is powerful when you start to see it happen and happen live and happen on real data. And I know, Romina, we've been talking about some really exciting use cases for how to support nursing from an operational and a quality perspective with the essentially the Biasa tool set. And
yeah, Robin, I do want to also talk about that as well with the great partnership that we have. And your support for nursing. Really, and I'm sure a lot of the attendees can agree with this. In healthcare, there's a multitude of different data silos, and because I'm biased to nursing, particularly in nursing, right? So there's a lot of different use cases where we can use Certara Vyasa to be able to kind of pull together all of that data sources, make it easy for the end user to ask a simple question and get the answer that they need. In nursing and in healthcare, data is everything. Your outcomes are everything. So if you're looking for a specific outcome with various different data sources, whether that's in PDFs or images or in HR data versus nursing staffing data, asking a question as simple as, can I predict the number of nurses that I need for this shift? Or can I predict the number of nurses that will be leaving based on employee survey or the exit interviews that I have? And how can I garner data from that using a tool such as Vyasa? So really, Robin has been a phenomenal partner in really taking a look at and exploring that kind of use case specific for nursing. And one of the things for our customer solution centers or CSC is it's the art of the possible, right? And Vyasa being there, being able to kind of help us ideate and come up with the different use cases for the issues that you're seeing, specifically for nursing or other clinical areas regarding data. Definitely reach out to us or to Robin as well.
And we have a question. We do have a question that was asked, and it was thoughts on using AI in quality operations. I know, Robin, we've talked about this one, so I know you've got some thoughts on this, but, I think the question has to deal with, assembling all of the information that's required for quality reporting and that type of thing. And any comments on that?
I think what you touch on is exactly spot on. It's the scale of data that it can bring in, the additional data points that it can bring together, that it can do it in real time or retrospectively. And I think more importantly, it can help you to start to find those anomalies much more easily. As it brings data together at a scale that it's really hard for humans to be able to do, and to be able to look at trending over time as well, and bring that into how it's looking at it, and being able to do essentially all of that at once. Like the time that it took me to talk through all the things it would do, it would have done it like 20 times. And I think that's really the difference in that sometimes our quality and our quality metrics are limited by what we're able to do as opposed to what we'd like to be able to do or the information we'd like to align together. And we look at it from, everything, from a Vyasa and Certara AI perspective, from, early drug discovery to clinical research to nursing use cases. In the end, we're helping to bring that data together so that you can then make those augmented and better decisions. And I think that really holds together in quality because that information tends to be very distributed, and also kind of hard to wrangle.
And I wanted to also add for that, and it's a twofold answer. One, in the quality operations, whether you're trying to decrease your falls or falls with injuries, or trying to kind of capture hospital-acquired pressure ulcers or pressure injuries, or you're trying to decrease your readmissions or decrease your length of stays. One is making sure that you have access to the right data. That data can be coming from your EMR, can be coming from your risk management tools, can be coming from a piece of paper where the nurses wrote in, what happened to the patient. Being able to capture that data in one location, easily accessible, and in a matter of minutes versus hours, trying to scour through those different data sources. One, saves the organization a ton of resources, man hours, to be able to just just get the data, and then two, saves time in being able to glean information or insight from that data and then actually do something about it. So that's where the quality improvement process kind of happens, right? So you start with what you have now, the data that you have, and then you measure what the outcomes are from that intervention that you're doing. And then the second is quality reporting. The amount of time and resources that hospitals are spending to be able to have to capture and measure quality data is tremendous as well. What if we can automate that? And then those hours and those resources can then be put on making those process improvements. So I think that's where AI really, we can see the benefits right at the bedside, is not only improving quality by being able to capture that data more efficiently, but also saving the organization's resource time so that they can do more in the quality improvement area.
Huge improvements. I'm sure the folks on the call are thinking to themselves, those are big areas we'd like to see improved, and the really important areas. And certainly, those tools are really calling it out as promise. And it's for us to help folks really kind of weed through what is out there and what we're seeing that is actually causing some real success. Great. Well, I think let's see. We can we've gotten through all of the questions and all of the comments that we've brought up. I think now, is a good time to really bring some closing remarks for the team, and we can go ahead and close out our day. So I'll start with you, Robin. Please offer us some closing thoughts to this discussion and to the interaction we've had with the folks today.
I love all the comments we've been getting in the chat. I'm excited to work with the folks to see what are the use cases that can start to help show improvements in their areas. Like Roger said, we can do virtual or in-person sessions. Always happy to help with that. But I think my real thought from today is that AI is not a one and done. It's also not glitter that you can throw on a process and it'll suddenly be shiny. That it's something that's incremental and that continues to help, and that I think everybody on here is being very thoughtful and looking out across what are things that people are doing that are successful, and then what are ways that we can learn from some of what other people have done to help things be more successful going forward. And that's, I think, what we're very, very focused on and dedicated to from a Certara perspective. Is our focus is making healthcare, is making drug discovery better, and really, in the end, a point that Romina brought up. In the end, we're all looking at how to improve outcomes for patients, for clinicians, for researchers, but that in the end, everything that we're gearing toward is to make outcomes better. And that AI is an incredibly powerful tool in that toolkit. It just depends on how you implement it as to how powerful it is for you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Very practical. Thank you, Aaron. What is your thoughts from today's conversation?
Yeah, totally agreed with what Robin is saying. None of this is simple to deploy. None of this is just set it and forget it type of platform. Which is why our focus is, on aligning with companies like Certara and their Vyasa platform and what that enables from the data side, right? To the quote that Manuel shared about, microscopes, a big invention of the 20th century, and big data, great invention of the 21st century, right? The data explosion is crazy. Being able to access that data, index that data, and point your tools at that data is critical. And it also is why we partner with a lot of other companies that we've identified and evaluated that can actually make a difference in clinical care. Chad mentioned about being able to monitor patients in real time across the country. You know, we've got a company we're working with that enables just that. Reach out to Roger, and you know, we can talk about that and do some demos. Right? There's a lot of areas where we're partnering to deliver these solutions, because we have the ability, because of the thousands of health systems we work with, we have the ability to test out some of these solutions, evaluate whether they would be a good fit for our customers, and working with them directly. And so we can apply that experience we've gained through the investigation and testing of the solutions across a broad community to customers looking to deploy these types of solutions.
Awesome. Yeah. And for those folks that are the early adopters, or the folks that are really starting to deploy those out there and in the nursing space, I mean, this is an area that's just been so exciting. So let's close this off with our resident nurse here, Romina. Your thoughts on the day? What a fun conversation.
I just love sessions like this. I love the level of engagement, the questions, and the the insights that that the attendees are also bringing, because we're learning from that. And that's one of the things I love about here at Dell, is being able to listen and garner a lot of these insights from our customers as well. And that's where we really base the different products and solutions that we have, right? It's from our customers, what our customers are saying, what our customers are really looking for. And from a nursing clinician point of view, it's what are the hot topics for clinicians? I always base it on what I was struggling with when I was a nurse at the bedside, or a director then, what I was going through, and how can we look at the multitude of technologies and solutions that we have, the partners that we have, to actually solve them. This is a very, very exciting time for me in healthcare, and for us, I think, as healthcare folks, is we have AI is here, right? There's a tremendous amount of opportunity for us to really make a difference and really improve how we care for our patients through AI. And it's a matter of being able to be curious about it and receptive to what it can bring, cautiously, of course, but look at partners and really, I'm not going to say vendors, but really strategic partners in helping you deliver what you want for your organization. And we'd love to be that partner for you. But ultimately, it's really just looking at what you want to do for your patients, and we'd love to help with that.
Thank you, Rena. Very well said. And thanks to all the panelists. I'm truly honored to be in the same virtual room with all of you. And more importantly, I'm really honored that the folks that came along to participate in the conversation today are here with us. And as was said, we learn every time from each other when we come and meet like this. So thank you all for coming and spending some of your time today, as well as participating. As was mentioned and was shown in the chat, any interest or any follow-up, please reach out to Roger Burnett or Robin Braun using those email addresses, and they'll be happy to follow up with you and continue this conversation with you and with your team. So thanks again for joining us today, and look out for follow-up for this session and for more sessions in the future. Thanks so much, and have a great day.